apologies for showing up late. In fact, it was all due to Raju Reddy Garu and Ram Reddy Garu. They held me up back there, so I'm blaming it on them. But nevertheless, thank you so much. It was exactly, I think, 7 years ago, in this very room, if I remember correctly, we had a meeting very similar to this. Back then, 7 years ago, I was here introducing to you the newborn state of Telangana. But today, 7 years later, I've come back, and I would like to introduce to you the triumphant state of Telangana. In fact, since I'm in Bay Area, I think it would be appropriate to say, 15th of August this year, India would be turning 75. And 75, obviously, as you all know, is a momentous occasion in the history of an individual or an organization or a nation. If you ask me, why do I call my state triumphant Telangana? It is because in the last 75 years after independence, I believe, since I'm in Bay Area, I believe that my state, Telangana, is the most successful startup of independent India. And this, again, I'm not merely making a statement for the sake of making one. I will back it up with data. I'll back it up with statistics. Why am I claiming that in 75 years of India, there has not been a more successful state than Telangana? The reason why I say that is because of 3 or 4 simple statistics that I'll present to you, and then you can decide for yourself. In 2014, when the new state of Telangana came into being, when the new state was formed, many of you in this room also had several apprehensions, several doubts in your mind as to what would happen, how things would pan out, how the state would kind of decide its priorities, how it would go about executing its vision. Does the political leadership have the ability to actually administer a newly formed state? And what will happen to the diverse population that there is in Hyderabad? What would happen to the cultural fabric, the cosmopolitanness? What would happen to industry? What would happen to IT? Number of questions, wherever I went, whoever I met, all these questions were asked. But today, I will juxtapose the facts of 2014 versus 2022. In 2014, when Telangana state was formed, our per capita income was about 1,24,000 rupees. And today, 7 years later, 7.5 years later, the per capita income has risen by a whopping 130% to 2,78,000 rupees. This is a matter of, in a span of 7 years. In a span of 7 years, Telangana's GSDP, the gross state domestic product, it was 4.9 lakh crore rupees back in 2014. Today, 7 years later, it is 11.54 lakh crores of rupees, a whopping 130% increase. Now, for those of you who do not understand what this means, how this translates into how well Telangana is doing, let me point out. India has 28 states. Indialo 28 రాష్ట్రాలు ఉన్నాయి. Out of these 28 states, Telangana is the 11th largest state geographically. భౌగోళికంగా తెలంగాణ 11వ అతిపెద్ద రాష్ట్రం. In terms of population, we're the 12th largest state in India among the 28 states. But according to Reserve Bank of India, Telangana today has emerged as the 4th largest contributor to India's economic growth. It has become a powerful economic engine that supports the backward states in India, elsewhere in the country, and it continues to grow at a breakneck speed. In fact, just to put out another statistic so that you understand better, Telangana's population, if you look at it, it's only 2.5% of the total Indian population. But our contribution to India's GDP is 5%, which goes to show you that Telangana continues to punch above its weight, continues to contribute to the nation, continues to grow as a state. In fact, let me also put things in perspective for you. All of this happened. 14% CAGR, compounded annual growth rate, over the last 7 years has happened despite the pandemic last 2 years, and despite not much support from Government of India. had we had normalcy, had we had normal conditions, I would like to believe that we would have grown even further, we would have achieved even more. So how did this happen? How did this startup become so successful? How did it become a unicorn? How did it become what it has become? Synonymous with progress on industrial front, synonymous with progress on agriculture, synonymous with welfare, synonymous with development. How did this happen? Our Honorable Chief Minister of Telangana, Sri KCR Garu, is a man who comes from the grassroots. He's a man who believes that before you talk big, before you talk of the coolest things that are out there in Bay Area and elsewhere, before you talk about semiconductor fabs, before you talk about electric vehicles and all the new things that are happening, before you talk about Web3, before you talk about anything else, he has told us on day one that we as a country, we as a state, need to ensure that the fundamental needs of the people are met with. So what did we do? We said, let's get the basics right. What do the people of Telangana want? When we started our journey, we were languishing on the power front, on the electricity front. We had frequent power outages. Industry was suffering 3 days of power outages. Domestic sector, in fact, each and every house was being subjected to about 6 hours of power cut. And of course, agriculture sector was in a huge distress. 3 days of power holidays for industry, and agriculture sector never received continuous supply of even 6 hours of power during the daytime. That was the situation on the power front. The total installed capacity of power in the state of Telangana was about 7,000 plus megawatts, whereas the demand was more than 9,000 megawatts. So we were reeling under a serious power crisis when the journey of Telangana began. Within a span of 6 months, Honorable CM has been able to solve this major problem which could not be solved in the previous 65 years. For those of you who are wondering, how did he do this? Did he have a magic wand? No. He just had a steely resolve. He was determined to change the course of our electricity situation. What he had done was he went for short-term power purchases. He ensured that our existing plants, the thermal power generation plants, operated at a higher PLF, higher plant load factor. He also ensured that India is a sunshine country. We all know that. We almost have sun for 300 days a year. So he decided that we'll harvest as much solar energy as possible. So today, as a result, what has happened over the last 7.5 years is our installed power capacity has increased from 7,000 odd megawatts to 16,000 plus megawatts. We have more than doubled our installed power capacity. And for those of you who use electric vehicles, for those of you who use hybrid cars, let me also point out, we're a very environmentally conscious state. So our installed solar capacity increased from about 40 megawatts to today about 5,000 plus megawatts. So our 15% of our power, in fact, comes from renewable sources. So that's the commitment of Telangana, and that's how we've been able to take care of our power sector. Today, happy to share with you, 24 hours of free power is given to our farmers, and uninterrupted quality power supply is given to our industries, and no scheduled power outages for the domestic sector. Very few states in India can claim that. The second thing I'll point out, what are the other basic needs of people? I was raised in different parts of Telangana, but my high school was in Hyderabad. I used to commute from my home in Irramanzil colony, which is next to Khairatabad, and go all the way to grammar school, which is in Abbots, Hyderabad. Any St. Georgians here? Ek hai kya yaar? So I used to travel in a RTC bus. It was bus number was 135. It used to go from Khairatabad, Anand Nagar colony to Venkatramana colony to Khairatabad to Lakdi Ka Pool to Abbots. Every summer around this time, March, I'll narrate a story to you. Every summer, when my bus used to pass through that Khairatabad area, there used to be a huge traffic jam. You peep out and see what's going on. You could see that there are women and political leaders protesting on the ground, right in front of that Hyderabad Metro Water Supply and Sewerage Board office. Thousands, hundreds of women demanding water पानी चाहिए, 14 दिन में पानी नहीं मिलता, 7 दिन में पानी नहीं मिलता. That was the situation. Today, happy to share with you, proud to share with you. In 75 years of Indian independence, no single state, no single leader has done what KCR Garu has done for Telangana. Every single household in Telangana today has a portable drinking water connection. We are a state, we are the only state which has provided 100% portable drinking water connection. And this is not me saying it. This is the Government of India's report, the Jal Jeevan Shakti Ministry, I think Jal Jeevan Mission Ministry, which basically declared on the floor of the House in Parliament that Telangana is the only state which has been able to accomplish this feat. How did we do it? We spent $7 billion, nearly 7 billion, nearly 40 plus crores of rupees. We connected each and every home. We laid nearly 100,000 kilometers of pipeline, which is literally, I think, 3 times the circumference of Earth. That's the vision. And in terms of execution, we were able to get it done in less than 4 years. Now, that is the kind of steely resolve. That is the kind of political will. That is the kind of dreaming big that our leadership, our Honorable Chief Minister is capable of. The third thing I'll point out on the irrigation front. Those of you who are from Telangana or those of you who are familiar with the geography of Telangana would know that Telangana had in fact, always the farmer of Telangana had in fact been heavily reliant on tube wells and bore wells. As a result, the depletion of groundwater levels in Telangana has been so rampant that even some studies of the international agencies have pointed out to a very, very acute kind of a crisis. So what our Honorable CM has done, because of the topography of Telangana, because of how Telangana is undulating and how water actually runs at a lower level and while the contours and while the plain lands are at a higher level. I have no idea how many of you know this. If you don't believe me, you can pull out your phone and type in Google. Please type in the world's largest lift irrigation project. You will realize that it is Kaleshwaram Project in Telangana, which has been completed in less than 4 years. It's the world's largest project completed by the youngest state in India in less than 4 years. We often talk about Chinese execution, how well things move in China, how a building was completed in 100 days, how a project was conceived and conceptualized in less than a couple of years, etc., etc. But what Telangana has done is nothing short of a miracle, considering that we live in a democracy. And democracy, there are a lot of challenges that are inherent in getting done. So in spite of all the hurdles, in spite of all the obstacles, in spite of all the challenges and the vagaries of democracy, our Honorable CM has been able to deliver on the irrigation front. And therefore today, the situation is such that the produce from Telangana, the harvest from Telangana is so much that even Food Corporation of India is saying, I can't procure more. I give up. We actually are now ahead of Punjab in terms of our paddy production. We have been able to surpass many other states which were leaders. Earlier, the United Andhra Pradesh used to be called Annapurna. Now I think Telangana has really become the Annapurna for entire India. It's the granary of India, which is able to produce enough for the rest of the country to be able to, consume. That has been the success, over the last 7 years, which I think, in my opinion, is one of a very, very interesting stories that has unfolded. It's besides the metrics, it's besides the numbers that I've mentioned, besides all these feats I've mentioned, there are 3 things I'd like to point out. While we were focused on getting the basics right on the power front, on the drinking water front, on the irrigation front, we did not focus excessively on one area, one subject. In fact, Telangana's growth story, if you ask me, centers around the 3I mantra: innovation, infrastructure, inclusive growth. That is the mantra that Telangana has followed. That is the mantra that Telangana has adopted. We innovated. A lot of people assume when I say innovation, a lot of people think, innovation is only confined to technology and tech parlance. Innovation has become a word, disruption has become a word which is synonymous with technology and startups. That's not the case. You can disrupt your processes, you can disrupt your policies. You can come out with newer ideas. You can come out with, reforms in administration, disrupting the legacy processes that have been there forever. That's exactly what Telangana has done. How did we go about doing it? We took a crowdsourcing kind of model. We actually collaborated with the people. For instance, when Honorable Chief Minister wanted a new industrial policy in the state of Telangana, what did he do? He got into a room like this with various industry bodies, with the Confederation of Indian Industry, with FICCI, with FAPSI, with DICCI. There are several organizations in India which are all representatives of various industry associations. Now, all of them came into the room. He sat with them for 7 hours. It was an interactive session. He asked them questions. He said, I want the best industrial policy, for my state. And this was right after the formation. And then he asked them, what are the problems? They obviously reeled out a number of them: power, lack of incentives, lack of policy clarity, no single window system, time-bound clearances, etc., etc. He asked our administration, he asked our IAS officers. He said, where can I find the best industrial policy? Where is the ease of doing business the lowest? Then they said, somebody said Singapore. Somebody else said Finland. Somebody else pointed out to another country. He made sure that all of those policies were brought into a room. He sat with them personally, and he eventually, the first piece of legislation that has been passed by the state of Telangana in November 2014 was a policy called as the IPASS. Now, what is IPASS? IPASS stands for the Telangana State Industrial Project. Can you? Naveen, what are you doing? Naveen is up to some mischief. Connectivity challenge.
Thank you very much, madam.
Is pointing out the IPASS, Telangana State Industrial Project. For instance, I take him as an example. If he, as an NRI, he owns a piece of land in his native, Nizamabad, and he wants to start a new factory which manufactures electronic goods. Let's imagine for a minute. As per IPASS, as per the statute, as per the legislation, Mahesh Bigala does not need to take any permission from the government of Telangana. He does not need to meet the minister. He does not need to meet the principal secretary. He need not meet the municipality. He need not meet the local Gram Panchayati. He can start construction of his factory on day one. He can hit the ground running. No state in India will tell you this. There is zero graft when it comes to industrial clearances. What happens though? In case you're wondering, does this work? That sounds too good to be true. Is he just talking his way through? He's a politician. How do I believe him? Let me tell you. When he actually starts the construction of his factory, all we request any investor is that you submit an application online simultaneously, because we need to know. While there is a self-certification process, we need to know who's doing business, who's doing what, who is investing what sector have they invested in, and what are they likely to, how much are they likely to contribute in terms of employment, etc., etc. When you submit an application online through the IPASS portal, we promise, again by legislation, all clearances in 15 days. What happens if I don't come back to you with a clearance in 15 days? On the 16th day, it's an automatic approval by legislation. It's a deemed approval. Again, no state in India will tell you this. The third thing that also happens right after you submit an application and the 15-day window lapses, from the 16th day, we can even penalize by legislation, by statute, the senior most of the bureaucrats also, a sum of rupees 1,000 per day, should they actually be held responsible for holding up the file. Again, no state in India will tell you this. This is what has made this kind of disruption, this kind of innovation has made Telangana the place to do business in. Therefore, in Telangana today, for an entrepreneur, not only do you have ease of doing business, you have peace of doing business. Your cost of doing business has come down. Your quality of doing business has gone up. There is zero graft. So therefore, for those of you who are wondering, does this really work? In the last 7 years, since we passed this legislation, we have given out more than 19,000 clearances through TSI Pass. We have been able to raise more than 2.3 lakh crore rupees as investment. We have been able to create more than 1.6 million direct job potential in the state of Telangana, out of which 85% have already materialized. We are not one of those vibrant states where things happen on paper, but actually reality kuch aur hi hai. We are one of those states which believes in delivering on the promise, which believes in making sure whatever commitments we make are lived up to. That's how this disruption has helped Telangana, not only on the industry front, but on several fronts. Now, what did I mean when I said infrastructure? Not only has Telangana built the world's largest lift irrigation project in less than 4 years, we have ramped up our power infrastructure with an investment of nearly 75,000 crores of rupees, from 7,000 to 16,000 megawatts. I just mentioned to you, on the drinking water front, we nearly spent $7 billion, and we have ensured that each and every home receives a portable drinking water connection. We also ensured that in the same trench that we laid for the water pipeline, we also have decided to lay a fiber optic cable, and that project also will be completed in the next few months. So each and every home in Telangana can be equipped with a 100 Mbps broadband connection. And people in Bay Area, you know the power. You know the power of a fiber optic network running into your home in terms of health, in terms of education, in terms of commerce, the kind of a game changer it can be when each and every home is kind of equipped with that. So this has been the infrastructure upgrade that has happened in Telangana. Now, on the inclusive growth part, what did I mean when I said infrastructure, innovation, inclusive growth? Telangana is a state that is focused on ensuring equitable growth, holistic growth, inclusive growth. For instance, when Government of India recently released a report, or in fact a report card, on the top 10 villages, Sad Adarsh Gramin Yojana. Can you give me another mic? In Sansad Adarsh Gramin Yojana, top 10 villages were listed out. Among the top 10, 7 villages were from Telangana. Among the top 10, then this is a ranking given by Government of India. When Government of India gave out Swachh Sarvekshan rankings, which are given out for municipal local bodies, 12 awards were given to the Telangana municipalities. So the rural development and urban development in Telangana go hand in hand, have been progressing. Palle Pragati and Pattan Pragati have been going hand in hand. Likewise, our IT exports, which were at 57,000 crores when the new state of Telangana came into being, have today, 7 years later, risen to 1,45,000 crores, a huge, humongous growth, and a much higher growth rate than the national average. But at the same time, not only did IT grow, our agriculture output has also increased manifold. In fact, agricultural contribution of agriculture sector to the GSDP of the state has increased from 16% to 21%. And this, when the GSDP kept on increasing from 4.9 lakh crores to 11.54 lakh crores. So you can imagine the kind of effort that goes into ensuring a primary sector like agriculture, continues to contribute and continues to increase its, contribution to the GSDP. Likewise, on the industry sector, I have just pointed out, industry in Telangana has done really well, but at the same time, it has not taken a toll on environment. Telangana is the only state in independent India which has been able to raise its green cover forest area and green cover in urban lung spaces by 7.7%, from 24% today to 31.7%. The universal metric that people talk about is about 33%. Now again, in case you're wondering how did that happen, our Honorable Chief Minister conceptualized a program called Haritaharam. We planted more than 240 crore saplings, 2.4 billion saplings. Now that's how sustainability also has taken a center stage in Telangana. While, welfare continues to be a priority, welfare of the poor and the vulnerable, we also ensured that development did not, get hindered because of that. While education, in the government sector, in the form of 973 rural residential schools have, prospered, we also ensured that private sector participation through private university legislation was also allowed, so that those of you who want to pursue opportunities in the private sector are also free to pursue their free will. Likewise, on the healthcare front, we had 3 medical colleges, only 3, in 65 years in Telangana. 3 that have been formed in 65 years. Today, in 7 years, the number of medical colleges in Telangana has risen to 13. 10 have been added, and 20 more medical colleges are being added, so that our children don't have to travel all the way to Ukraine or Philippines or China to pursue their education or educational needs, for their educational needs. So this is the kind of planning, this is the kind of visioning that has made Telangana what it has. Now, what am I doing in Milpitas? What am I doing in the United States? Of course, I'm telling everybody the growth story of Telangana. I'm asking them to be a part of this growth story. And particularly to you guys, the diaspora here, my humble appeal is on 2 counts. One, our Honorable Education Minister, ఇప్పుడే మీతో మాట్లాడారు, విద్యాశాఖ మంత్రి గారు సబితా ఇంద్రారెడ్డి గారు చాలా స్పష్టంగా చెప్పారు. 7,230 కోట్ల రూపాయలతో తెలంగాణలోని 26,000 పాఠశాలల్ని వాటి రూపురేఖలు మార్చాలని చెప్పి మన రాష్ట్ర ప్రభుత్వం, గౌరవ ముఖ్యమంత్రి గారు కంకణం కట్టుకున్నారు. ఆ విద్యా యజ్ఞంలో ఒక మిషన్ మోడ్లో జరిగే కార్యక్రమంలో మీరెవరైతే నా మాతృభూమి కోసం, నా గ్రామం కోసం, నా పట్టణం కోసం నేను ఏదైనా చేస్తే బాగుంటుంది, ఒకవేళ అవసరమైతే నా తల్లిదండ్రుల పేరు మీదో, మా నాయనమ్మ తాత పేరు మీదో, మా అమ్మమ్మ తాత పేరు మీదో ఏదైనా చేయాలనుకుంటే మీకు ఈ విద్యా యజ్ఞంలో పాల్గొనే ఒక అవకాశం ఉంది. అంటే ఇదేదో మీ మీదే ఆధారపడి ప్రభుత్వం చేస్తున్న కార్యక్రమం కాదు. వీఆర్ నాట్ రిలయంట్ ఓన్లీ ఆన్ participation of private individuals or private sector in terms of ramping up our education infrastructure. But this offers a wonderful opportunity for you to actually participate, to actually, feel good about giving back to your own village, to your own society, to your own homeland. So my humble request to all of you, those of you who are interested in participating in Manavuru, Manabadi, this is my school, my village, you can, through the portal, you can in fact choose the school that you would like to donate to. For example, my school is somewhere in Kottagudem, and I would like to donate to that particular school. You can in fact donate only to that school, so that you ensure that whatever contribution you have made goes only to that school and that account and nowhere else. And we have also decentralized the process, and we have decided that in the next 3 years, all 26,000 schools will be covered, and we will do a massive upgrade of the educational infrastructure in Telangana. I urge you all to participate in this process. I urge you all to actually open up the purse strings. And Mahesh said $1. I don't think $1 counts really, because I think you spend that in a dollar store, not for your school. So you have to contribute more generously. You have to give back more generously. After COVID, after the pandemic, I think many of us have realized that life is short and our shelf lives are even shorter. So the more you give, the more good karma that you build. So it's good for your children, it's good for your families, it's good for all of you to actually give back more and to ensure that, your name remains right there on the podium or on the slate out there back home in your schools. The second request I have of you, of course, we have the biggies. We have the Amazons, Googles, Apples, Facebooks, Microns, Novartises, I can go on. There's a huge list, long list. All of them are investing significantly in Telangana. They're continuing to push, our bar in terms of, what all India can produce, India can deliver for the world. They continue to, in fact, make us proud by their investments in Telangana and in India. While all this is good, all the big boys coming into Telangana is a good story. It makes for a good, headline. Qualcomm, in fact, yesterday has announced that now their second largest center will be Telangana. They are investing a big amount in Telangana, and they're inaugurating their facility sometime later this year. Now that list goes on. That story can go on. Of course, that momentum has to continue to ensure that we continue to keep pace with the growth. But those of you who are actually in the IT space, those of you who are wanting to do something more entrepreneurial, those of you who have been, thinking, especially after the pandemic, that, it does not really matter where you work from. I think pandemic has really shown as a mirror. It has proved that it doesn't matter whether you work from home or whether you work from your garage, or whether you work from your bathroom. Nobody cares as long as you deliver. That's how it has been. That is exactly what pandemic has shown all of us across the world. In fact, there is a company in India called as Zoho. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. This gentleman has actually shown that software development and coding also can happen, in a very, very dispersed, in a very decentralized mode. In fact, from rural villages across the state of Tamil Nadu, Sridhar Vembu, I think his name is, he's been able to show that Zoho can actually start, kind of collating all the code, collating all the programming efforts, and ensure that the service levels are kept up. So my humble request to all of you, those of you who are especially, running IT consultancy firms, product firms, and are having startup ideas, Hyderabad and Telangana are great places to do business in. But when I say Hyderabad, I just don't mean Gachibowli or Kondapur or Madhapur. Because for most of you, in fact, you land in Shamshabad, you go to Gachibowli, enjoy working there, go to a nice pub or something there, and then go back home, and that's what you believe is Hyderabad. No. Hyderabad has more to offer. We have brilliant new locations like Uppal, LB Nagar, Kandlakoya, Kompalli, the northern part of Hyderabad, the central Hyderabad, where the cost of living is even lower compared to the other parts of Hyderabad. So therefore, my humble request to you is, because we cannot end up like Bangalore. We cannot afford to end up like Bangalore. 25 years ago, I used to love going to Bangalore because it was one of my favorite cities, the cosmopolitan nature of it, the social life, and the gardens, the temperature being low. In fact, there was a time in Bangalore where you didn't have to turn on a fan. You could be fine. But now, if you go to Bangalore today, in fact, I met somebody who told me that he was driving from Bangalore to Hyderabad, which is about 600 kilometers. I don't know in miles. You guys only talk in miles. But 600 kilometers is what it is. He told me that the amount of time it takes for him to get from Hyderabad city to Bangalore airport, and from Bangalore airport into his place, the other side of the city, I'm presuming, is exactly the same. So it takes him 5 hours to get to Bangalore airport in Yelahanka. From there again, to get to his place, it takes him another few hours. So he was lamenting, that Bangalore has grown despite the government, etc., etc. I'm not here to trash the BJP government in Karnataka. All I'm saying is, there is a lot of inertia in Bangalore. A lot of people continue to invest in Bangalore because of inertia, because you're used to being there, because you're used to living there, you're used to kind of thinking only Bangalore. But let me tell you, it's a toss-up between inertia and dynamism. Inertia in Bangalore, dynamism in Hyderabad. You have to make up your choice. You have to actually look at this with your eyes open. Because I believe very firmly, Hyderabad today offers the best value proposition in the entire country. It offers you the biggest bang for the buck. Our quality of infrastructure is twice better when compared to Bangalore. But it comes at half the cost. Our cost of living is lower compared to Bangalore, at least I think I would say by 20-30%. Likewise, the ease of doing business is much better. Government being an enabler is another huge plus. And more importantly, let me remind you all, 40% of Bangalore's workforce is from Telugu states. 40% of the people that work in the IT space in Bangalore are actually Telugu. So given an opportunity, they would run back to Hyderabad, they would run back to Vizag maybe, and they'd be very, very content in working in their hometown or home state. So my humble request to all of you, kindly start looking at the newer opportunities in other parts of Hyderabad, and more importantly, Government of Telangana. When I said inclusive growth, what did I mean? Even in information technology, we did not stop at Hyderabad. We have created 5 plug-and-play facilities already. Warangal, Khammam, Karimnagar, Nizamabad and Mahbubnagar will be inaugurated this year. And we have gentlemen like Raju Reddy. Where is he? Raju Anna has actually done a beautiful job with what is called as Kakatiya Sandbox in Nizamabad, creating a brilliant, brilliant avenue. Why don't you just say hello? Maybe just a wave. Please, he deserves a big round of applause. And in the last 3 or 4 days, and particularly in the last few months, some really, really interesting entrepreneurs have come forward. They told me, I'll just give you a couple of examples here of people who are around me. Where is Srini Surukanti? Now this guy, his name is Srini Surukanti. He moved back from Texas back to India. He comes to me one day and he says, you are aware of NTT data? Is the question he asked me. I said, yes, of course. Who doesn't know? He said, they want to open a center in Adilabad. I was in disbelief. I said, why would they do it? He said, no, I'll introduce you to the CEO. So this gentleman called Sanjeev Deshpande, I think it is. Sanjeev Deshpande comes to see me. He says, I want to open a center in Adilabad and I'm committed to it. I was surprised. I was obviously pleasantly surprised. I said, fine, let's make it happen. Then I introduced him to the local MLA. Both of them go take a tour of the place. And they come back in a week saying, we've already made placement offers to 75 people, and we'll be 120 by the next week. We want you to come and inaugurate the new facility. We have rented a building, which is a government building, and it's up and running. So it's a brilliant, brilliant story in terms of what appetite these tier 2 and tier 3 towns have. Not just this one example. Let me call on Vamsi. Where is Vamsi? Vamsi is from Seattle. In fact, he runs a company called, there are some Seattle folks. He runs a company called Quadrant Resources. Vamsi is from Warangal, Narsampet. He decided, while he's growing and he continues to grow here in Seattle, he wanted to set up a large center in Warangal. Warangal, we already have a few nice names. There is the Tech Mahindra Center, there is Scient, Genpact is now growing there, Mindtree is growing there, and then we already have a few other local companies. When Vamsi approached us, he said, I need a piece of land so I can build my own campus. We were surprised. We said, why don't you actually go and rent something? He said, no, as part of my growth plan, I want to actually invest something rock solid. I want to grow my business. I want to ensure that the center expands. So he's taken up a land there. Now he's already constructing. And he was narrating a beautiful story to me. His father, who's a 75-year-old gentleman, what's his name? Muralidhar Reddy Garu. He called him. He said, Dad, you haven't seen me in 2 years. You haven't seen the kids in 2 years. So why don't you come over to Seattle? You can spend some time with us in the summer. You know what his father says? He says, I'm supervising the construction of your office. As soon as it is completed, I'm going to board on a flight and I'm actually going to come see you in Seattle. Now that's commitment. That's passion. That's, I think something that we all need to take a leaf out of. Let me also point out to a few other guys. Mahesh Bigala here. He's an entrepreneur. He used to live in New Jersey. He moved back to India now. I don't know where he lives anymore because sometimes he's seen here, sometimes he's seen there. But he is in fact now working very aggressively with some Nizamabad NRIs to build up, we are building up the plug and play facility there. He's trying very hard along with his brother, the local MLA there, Ganesh, to ensure that Nizamabad center also takes off in a big way. Likewise, we had a gentleman today, I don't know where he is, Venkat Kanumuri. Venkat Kanumuri, please say hi, sir. Venkat comes to me today and he says, sir, nenu Jagdish Reddy garu Suryapeta Minister garu tonu matladanu. I want to launch a center in Suryapet. I said, why would you want to do it in Suryapet? He says, sir, some of my employees are from Vijayawada, some of them are from Nalgonda, some of them are from Khammam. So I'm actually happy launching a center there because the attrition will be lower, their content levels are higher, so I'm doing it. So he's doing a nice center with about, how many people, sir? 50 to 150 people in Suryapet. So I can go on. I have another 10 examples of various entities. Is Ravi here? I don't know. Ravi, the gentleman who's also launching operations in Warangal. He's also doing a 1500 center in Warangal. I can go on. The list is huge. We have set a goal for ourselves. And we said IT should not be confined to Hyderabad alone. We should take it to tier 2, tier 3 towns, and we should make it happen. In our rural tech policy, we have set a target of 50,000 jobs in the tier 2, tier 3 towns in the next 5 years. And I think it's eminently doable with all of your support, with all of your guidance and blessing.